Welcome back to another episode of Whip Media TV. I'm your host, Whip Media Mickey, aka Mickey Made It. If you're new to the channel, you know what to do to the channel. Subscribe right now. Join the Vibe Tribe. And if you want to be generous and leave me a tip for my hard work, I'll leave the link down below for the Cash App. Okay, on today's episode, I cover The Green Mile, Life Lessons. Green Mile is a movie adapted from a story about the lives of a few guards on duty in death row. The story leads up to the execution of a wrongly accused man that has a spiritual gift that permits him to perform extraordinary feats as he heals the wounded or sick. Paul is the main character in the story, and his narrative leads to the viewer through a narrative, a type of flashback as he tells of his experience to his friend Elaine. Paul is in an old age living at a retirement home many years after working as the head guard on death row at Cold Mountain Penitentiary in the state of Louisiana. Paul was a skeptical prison guard whose faith and sanity had deteriorated after many years of walking men down the Green Mile to their deaths by execution. They called it the Green Mile because the linoleum floor that led to the execution chair was green. Paul's life will forever be changed by one prisoner in the 1935 Depression era. Paul and the other death row guards develop moral dilemmas with their profession as they discover one of their prisoners, convicted of brutally murdering two 9-year-old sisters, has an extraordinary gift that, in words, is unexplainable. This gifted but seemingly harmful man is John Coffey. As he enters the Green Mile, the guards are completely taken by the paradox of his massive size and soft-spoken manner. He is a black man that is nearly 8 feet tall with hands the size of a cast iron pan. Although John's size could indicate that he could kill just about anyone, his behavior contrasts his appearances. Paul begins to find it odd that John is accused of murder because of his purely naive personality and his horrifying fear of the dark. Paul and Brutus, a sympathetic guard, along with Percy, a conceited, immoral, and violent guard, as well as the warden, begin their journey with extraordinary experiences with John Coffey that involves an intelligent mouse and the healing of the sick and wounded. As another prisoner, William Warden, known as Wild Bill, enters the Green Mile, disorderly effects begin to take place. John Coffey warns the guards that Wild Bill is a bad man. Lesson number 1. Values. See, values are the criteria that emerge for the people to use in judging what is appropriate, correct, moral, and important. The values amongst the guards on Green Mile demonstrate that these criteria profoundly throughout the movie. For example, the guards practice the electrocution process for each man on death row before the execution takes place. In one scene, they use one of the prisoners in the practice session, and the prisoner makes a joke while in the electric chair, and all the guards laugh except for Paul. Paul immediately pulls the values back into perspective and tells everyone to stop because an execution will take place tomorrow, and he did not want anyone to remember that moment and make a mistake because the act of electrocuting offered no room for mistakes or laughter. This is a prime example of a culture and as a system of beliefs shared by group members that guides and constrains their conduct. Societal value consensus can be seen in both the beginning and ending of this film. In the beginning, the father of the two girls is on the manhunt with fellow neighbors. As the father hears John Coffey's screams, they all run and their father begins to beat him as he sees his dead daughters in John Coffey's arms. John is then spit on by the sheriff. There were no questions asked and the trial is short. This society just assumed that John had killed the girls. There were never a court scene to show innocent until proven guilty. In the end of the film, when John Coffey is electrocuted, he is still the accused even though Paul and the other guards know of his innocence. They are constrained to comply with the jury's guilty verdict and they hide their tears. This also demonstrates how cultures in different society groups form and become established. John Coffey's master status as a black man in the film overrode the emotions in the small town society in which he was accused of being a rapist, although in the end, Paul discovers that John Coffey is innocent after holding his hand and foreseeing through John the dramatic events that led the girl's deaths by another prisoner, Wild Bill. Lesson number 2. Society that labels. In a biased society, assigning a deviant status to an individual dominates their identities and behaviors. Those being labeled seem powerless to change because they live the identity and behavior chosen by the law system which labels. This is a result of systematic bias, and John Coffey is a prime example of being the labeled. He was labeled a Negro by the attorney, and in the southern culture of Louisiana in 1935, this was doomed status. John Coffey's attorney compared John to a dog that bit his child face, and this even further plays into the 3 societal reaction perspectives. See, society labels the individual, and the individual begins to identify with the label. Lastly, the individual lives with the label, and John was labeled without further ado. Lesson number 3. Deviating behavior. Deviating behavior are that the individual confirms the moral boundaries. The second is, this brings the group together, and the third is, it reaffirms what is right and wrong. This is correlated well in a scene with the guards as they take John Coffey off the prison base to the warden's house, where John can use his gift and save the life of the warden's wife, who is diagnosed with a cancerous brain tumor. See, the guard has previous conversation and determined the moral boundaries in taking a prisoner on death row off the prison base. This brought the group closer together because they all shared in this deviant behavior, and they realized that they could lose their jobs. They affirmed the right and wrongs of taking John to the warden's house. In the end, John saved the warden's wife because of a deviating behavior. Lesson number 4. Morality of society. Moreover, it involved morality and are considered important enough by society to merit severe punishment. If these guards had been caught with John Coffey by society, they too would have been severely punished. But in this group society, this was considered a moral decision that was justified. The guards continuously stated, what happens on the mile stays on the mile. The Green Mile. Life lessons.